Hey guys, what's up? It's Adina, and today I'm going to be talking you through open D and why it's a fantastic guitar tuning no matter what your skill level. So in open D tuning, what we are essentially doing, so if we're in standard right now, we've got E, A, D, G, B, high E. So save for the B string, this whole tuning is done in fourths. Now in open D, first string, currently an E, it's going to tune down a tone to a D. Your second string, the B, is also going to tune down one tone to be an A. The G is going to tune down only one semitone to become an F sharp. Your fourth string, the D is just going to stay a D. Your fifth string, the A is just going to stay an A. And then your bottom E, your sixth string, goes down to be a D. When you're all done, your open strum is just going to be a major chord. But on the bottom, instead of having a fourth, we now have a fifth. This is huge because a fifth is basically a power chord. When you play in standard, you do them like this. But when you're in open D, you've already got that on the bottom. You'll see people use just two fingers moving around. That's the most basic way to play in this tuning. And something that I love about this tuning is that you think about it, for the most part, in a linear fashion. In standard, when we move about in first position, we're actually moving in a vertical fashion, which is not as intuitive to our brain as just moving horizontally, especially if we think of our big major chord as our key, as our root, as our one. Now, I'm going to start talking about things in terms of numbers, so I just want to catch everyone up to speed. It's the most universal way to think about chords in a song. For almost all popular music, we have a key center, which means that that key, that note, that scale, etc., that's our home note, okay? That's what we would call one. So in our case here in open D, we're going to think of D as one. I'll just talk low E string. So D is one. We're going to base everything off the major scale because that is, for the most part, what all this popular music is based off of. So if D is our one, it follows that E is our two, F sharp is our three, G is our four, A is our five, B is our six, C sharp is our seven, D is our eight, back to one. Of course, we have all the semitones in between, but no need to worry about them yet. We know the meme of the 4-chord song, and it just works. It works. So for the most part in the music that we all like to listen to and maybe like to play, we're going to be using the 1 chord, the 4 chord, the 5 chord, and the 6 chord in some arrangement or other. Now you might be thinking, but Adina, how can these chords work when all you're doing is you're just shifting the bottom two and all the other notes are just happening? How is that, how does that still sound like different chords to our ears? And that's a great question. And it's because of that fifth on the bottom. The pull of a fifth on the bottom is so strong to our ear that any of the other notes on top, they serve more as colors. If I'm playing this open D compared to our 4 chord, which would be G, and again, I'm playing it in its most basic form, just putting that fifth on the bottom, that has a different feeling because those are our bottom 2 notes. Same thing if I move up to the A chord, that fifth on the bottom is still pulling us. Now, it also helps that there are common tones. So some of these notes on top, for example, the D or even maybe the A, are notes that can work in D major, G major, etc. These 1, 4, 5, 6. E is 1, G is 4, A is 5, B is 6. So it helps that some of these strings that are ringing out, they actually do belong or have a role to play in any of those numbered chords. The other thing, like the big thing to talk about, is major versus minor chords. Like even if you're a beginner, you've probably heard of this. Major chords are described as happy, minor chords are described as sad. And without going into too much detail, when we have our 1, 4, 5, 6 business going on, we have 1 as a major chord, 4 as a major chord, 5 as a major chord, but 6 has a minor sound. So this would be considered B minor. The rest are D major, G major, A major, okay? The minor chord is important because it keeps things funky fresh. The, sad sounding chord gives us a new color, a new mood to our song. So that's where something called the third comes in. So the third, if you think of a triad, I think of it on piano, 1 through 5. Basically what we're doing is we're building our notes in skips. So if I have D major, I have D as my bottom note, I'm going to skip E, then I'm going to go to the next note, which is F sharp. Then I'm going to skip G, I'm going to go to the next note, which is A. So essentially a D major triad is made up of the notes D, F sharp, and A, which is exactly what we have tuned to, right? We have no notes besides those. F sharp is the third. Always on this formerly G string, now F sharp string on our third string. Funnily enough, it's the third string. It's going to be the third in all of our chords because we're thinking this way. Technically, if you're a fan of bar chords, you could make a full major chord just by barring, on one fret. I find that part of the magic of this tuning is letting some of those open strings ring, so I personally don't do this, but of course you can. What I will use though is that third string. So in D major, we can leave this open, but let's say we're going to our 4 chord, that G major. Right now, if we think about G major as G being the 1, the third, so the important note that makes things major or minor. I don't know if I said that. The third is the note that makes things sound either major or minor. That third note in G actually doesn't exist because if you think about it, the third of G is B. So what I like to do, in line with everything, you can pop another finger down and then you get this sound. We have our third now. Now with this, I can shift up to make an A major triad, and it's specifically major. Now you're probably wondering, what about the B minor? What about the B minor? What are we supposed to do there? Well, good news is that the only difference between a major and a minor is that your third is down 1 semitone. So the way that I like to play in general with these 2 fingers is instead of using the first 2, I actually use my middle finger and my 4th finger. Guitar. My middle and my ring finger, because that gives me a lot of freedom in terms of major and minor. Because what I can do if it's a major chord is I just pop my pinky down on that third. But if it's a minor chord, instead of having the pinky, I just go 1 fret lower on that string. And then guess what? Now that's a minor third instead of a major third. You can hear the difference. Major third, minor third. Now, I will say, sidebar, that in B minor, our third does exist in a lot of open strings, because if you think of B, our third there is actually D. So we're an open D tuning. You're going to get a ton of Ds. You can actually just leave every string open, and you actually get a full B minor chord. But in the other ones, in the A major and the G major, you don't have the luxury of the third being one of the open strings. I highly suggest adding it for a really pretty sound. Compared to, they're just different sounds. It's up to your ear, it's up to your preference. I'm just saying that in a lot of my videos, a lot of my covers, I like to pop the third on there. Where the minor third comes in really handy is whenever we have transitions, like a really popular one is if you're going from G major, so 4 major, to 4 minor, so G minor. Right? That's a really popular sound. It sounds awesome to have the third, go to the minor. A really good example of this is Savior Complex, which I did a cover of, but it was actually on piano, but it's the same concept. The chord progression, when we have, for example, one hand on the wheel, one in your mouth, turn me on, turn me down, right? That's what's going on there. That's what makes it sound so cool, is we're going from the regular sound that we expect, which is G major, and then we have the minor chord there. Another place that I do hear this a lot is on the 2 chord. I know that's not one of our main 4, but if we're going there, let's go there. It's very easy to do in open D, and you'll maybe see or hear it in a bunch of my covers. So typically in a major scale, our 2 chord is minor. So in our case here, it's E minor. It's a great sound. It sounds awesome. Yeah, so what I just did there is I went from this E minor to our 3 chord, which is F sharp minor. So easy. Slide it around, and it doesn't have to be, like I said, doesn't have to be just the 5th. But it totally can be. Mwah, that's the beauty of this tuning. But anyway, you can have your 2 B minor, typical, or funky, you can make your 2 actually have the major 3rd in there. Get a little crunch. You could technically make your 3 chord B major too. It's a really cool effect. So that's the thing, is it's really easy to play around in this tuning because you've got your, your main shape, if I can even call it a shape, is just your 5th on the bottom. You can just slide your 5th around. Like if I'm gonna play 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Just don't worry about 7. You're not gonna play 7. Just don't worry about it. That's where you start, right? And then from there you can experiment with major versus minor 3rds. The nice thing about it being so linear is that visually you actually can tell what chord I'm playing, and then the only thing you really have to listen for is it the happy sound or is it the sad sound? Of course you can pop a capo on something, as I've done many times before. If I put my capo on the 3rd fret, technically we're in F major, but that's still 1. So 2 is still gonna be here, 3, 4. It's the same principle. So you can shift things around with a capo based on, like if you're singing, you might want things in different places to fit, your vocal range. The wonderful thing about this tuning is that you have the capacity within the octave to play every single chord that you could ever need to play, especially in a pop, rock, indie, etc. context. For the most part, what you guys are hearing on my channel, in my music, the things that you love, the things that you're asking for, you can cover all your bases in this tuning. Just listen hard if things are major or minor, or even visually, like I said, major is gonna line up. Minor is not. You'll see that there is something on the fret before. So use your 5th, play around in this tuning. It's a super user-friendly tuning for anyone of all levels, just to explore some new sounds. And that's the other thing too, is even if you know all your standard tuning shapes and sounds and notes and chords, insides and out, a new tuning is just gonna open some new doors. And that's something that I found a lot in my writing, is that if I hit a roadblock, if I change tunings, something new will come out just because I'm dealing with some new sounds, some new arrangements of notes. All that being said, hope this was a helpful intro tutorial to open D tuning, how to use it, what to listen for, what to look for. Stay tuned for part 2, where I talk about more advanced harmony in this tuning and why this can be a super tuning to play even more complex genres of music like jazz. Catch you later.